Dear God, I want to thank you for this Sabbath day. We've had already many presentations, a lot to take in. I want to thank you for the good fellowship we have and the good discussions we have here at the camp. The last presentation of Elder Marco. I want to thank you for the blessings we have received so far. I pray that you watch over us this hour as well. In Jesus' name, amen. So, initially I was planning to have 3 presentations, but it was suggested that it would be good to have a 4th and last one. Thank you so much. I'm going to use this as a question and answer. I'm planning to do a summary and a question and answer, but I think I'll use the questions to make up a summary. So several people have been asking me about the internal issues in the movement. Well, what's your position on the internal messages in the movement at the moment? And I didn't present that. I didn't do that line. I was asked to, what about Syria? What about January 6th? And I think all those questions are valid and they're good questions. But they're not part of my story. They belong to a different story in the same history. So I cannot use my line, let's call it the Ukraine line, and say something about January 6th. Because I think that's an internal USA story. And that's a different line. You can make a line of it. And I'm sure it's part of a line. But at least this weekend, I'm here to support, or my specialty is the Ukraine line at the moment. And perhaps we'll come back to those questions later. But I don't think at this point I'm here to have very strong opinions on the internal issues. So one of the things that I talked about regarding Panium um, was that I suggested it starts in February and it ends in October. And one of the questions is, Panem is Beneventum, and in Beneventum the elephants turned back on their own arms. The elephants of Pyrrhus destroyed their own army. And I think I addressed that, but perhaps a little shortly, or I think Elder Marco's presentation of this morning touched nicely on that. He said, these are my own words, but he said, the king of the south, Russia, specialty, so to say, was information war. And the USA, for a long time, didn't even pay attention to it. So they lost battle after battle after battle. So the elephant is a specialty of the king of the south. And this elephant, I think that is not even my invention. I think it's even Elder Tess saying it already. It's not something new. Is that 2021 is the point where the USA starts to be the winner in this war, in this information warfare. So it's the point where they, I don't know how to express it, I guess I said it. Where the USA starts to win those battles. And that's by the decisions that Biden takes. He receives lots of information of intelligences, and he decides to share them with the allies and to push a narrative, a story to the world that Russia cannot be trusted, is not a reasonable partner. Since Putin is president in 2000, all the way to, you could say today, he has pushed the narrative that Russia is trustworthy. You can reason with them. They're not so bad as everybody thinks. And he was very successful in that, because NATO didn't even see Russia as an enemy anymore. Many European countries did business with Russia. And just saw it as a normal partner, or a normal, just as another partner. So they were very successful. Putin was very successful in pushing that narrative. And 2021 marks the point where Biden says, no, it's not true. We should change this story. All the European partners or many other nations didn't believe him. And it took until February of 2022, the invasion, for those other people to realize that Biden was right. So the elephants turning back on Putin is what happened in 2021. It's where America starts to win the information warfare. And starts to... The narrative that America pushes into the world is now the story that most people believe. I think Elder Marco touched on that neatly. That the way they have done that, and with private companies that helped the United States, and that's why we believe the American story. The story in the media, the story at social media. Is actively pushed. Is brought to us. And the misinformation from Russia and the misinformation from Russian allies is being actively cut down. And the private companies working with the American government have play a big part of that. So I think that's the elephant turning back on its own ranks. So I had a question about why using Viktor Orban as an Exeter. Because Orban is a European prime minister. And how can the EU, in regard to have... The EU is not the king of the North. So sorry. So yes, I used Viktor Orban as the person starting the discussion about a ceasefire. But he's not on his own. He's not doing it on his... He's not doing it alone. I think he is... You could say he's a puppet of Putin. There's many people call him like a puppet of Putin. Or or the useful idiot. But I think he's also a puppet of Trump, because Trump doesn't really have power in until now. Even in the last year, 2 years, he doesn't really have a position of power. But he has been in contact with Orban. There have been calls, and Orban has been in Florida visiting Trump. So Orban is the European Trump, so to speak, the mini version. And he has a position. He's leader of a country. He can do something. So he starts this. He fires up this discussion. And I think in the quotes that we read yesterday, you could see that as soon as he has a meeting with Trump, 1 or 2 days later, he comes in the media and shares something about it. Then he says, well, Trump has a plan and Trump is going to fix this. And he said that because he talked with Trump about it 2 days before. Viktor Orban took the opportunity of that presidency of the Council of the EU to be more vocal and to be more visible and to push for a ceasefire. So I don't think Orban is representing the EU, and the EU is not the king of the north. So when I mark Exeter for this story, I would mark it starting in July with Orban visiting Putin on, I think it's July 5. And I would mark November 7 when Trump calls Putin. So it starts with Orban, it ends with Trump. So if you make Exeter a point on a bigger line, I would mark November 7. And that is Trump and not Orban. Does that make sense? Yesterday I discussed a lot of dates relating to Orban. I'm not saying that every date that I discussed is a waymark. It was just it was a description of the history. And I don't think I picked the important ones out to establish the waymark yet. So these are the two that I would mark as the important ones describing Exeter. This is Orban visiting Moscow. And November 7 is Trump calling Putin. And they both do the same thing. But both are not in a position to fix the problem. Orban has a position. He's prime minister. He's head of Hungary. but as head of Hungary, you cannot do much. He's just one of many. He's not in a position to fix the war in Ukraine. And November 7th, Trump is not in position either to fix it. But they both have set how do you say that? Set this process in motion. For it to be finished later in the future. And I would say that's then Sunday law. Question? Mm-hmm. Okay.
In your story of Panium,
Mm-hmm.
you have the same players at your bookend. So it's the same entities at the beginning and the end. But when you get to Exeter, why is it different? Because now it's not the same story.
I think it's the same story. Yeah, sorry. So this is Viktor Orban. And mm-hmm. Okay. So you're saying, oh, maybe that's even here. So you're saying at Panium, February, it's the same player as in October.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to do that again when you say Panium Sunday law?
So you say Panium, Sunday law, that's both Biden.
It's America, Ukraine, Russia, America, Ukraine, Russia.
Okay?
And then for Exeter, you have different entities. Different to the other ones.
But
might have the
isn't
same
Panium, Sunday law different players? You say America now, but it's Biden there and it's Trump at the Sunday law.
The point.
It's Biden at Panium, it's Trump at the Sunday law.
The point I understood you were making
Mm-hmm.
to establish Ukraine
Mm-hmm.
and not Syria or anyone else
Mm-hmm.
is that it's a story about Ukraine and Russia, America, Ukraine. Oh, sorry. What I understood your point to be when you brought the Ukraine story was the importance to see Ukraine at the beginning and Ukraine at the end. And that's why it couldn't be Syria. And so if those are the players we're looking for, the story is about Ukraine. So now with Exeter, could you explain why now you have different players?
You want to answer that question? Or you're...
I want to ask a question to this. Maybe it will help.
Okay.
My question would be, do we have to differentiate the players from the geography?
So that's the same question that he has?
It's to question his question.
Oh. Okay. Well, I see what you're saying. So I'm responding to Curtis. I see your point, but at the same time, I know I mark Viktor Orban. But I also said I don't think this is his work. He is just the puppet of Trump. So he is the one doing the dirty work because Trump isn't really able to. I chose November 7. I could have chosen December 8 when Orban had his last phone call with Putin. And I don't think that makes a big difference in the story. But I think November 7 is more significant, and that's why. Okay. Okay. So most people are concerned about the internal things. And I understand that. So yesterday I said I'm putting out an external, I'm putting out a line regarding Ukraine or regarding King of the North, King of the South. And I'm saying that gives a certain structure. And this structure can help us to identify other lines. How do you make like this straight line? Because this. That looks better. Thank you. So this structure can help us to understand another line. For example, the internal structure. The internal America story, or the internal story within the movement. So I think for 2022, I think generally accepted that the Vesper study of Elder Tess were the increase of knowledge for this movement. It was from February to June. For you? Okay.
So it's a. Can you hear me? Okay.
The microphone is just for the people at home, I think.
Okay. So it's someone asking on Zoom if the. I say it in French. Someone can translate in English. Okay. And the 17th of July, declare on Fox News that it will. Sorry, that he will. Okay, I repeat. It seems to me that the 17th of July. Trump declared on Fox News that he will deal with the problem of Ukraine in one day. So we can see Trump as well at the beginning at the place of Orban.
Thank you. So the person at Zoom says you can put Trump here as well. So you either have Trump, Trump, Orban, Orban. And I chose Viktor Orban, Trump.
Thanks.
That's what I got from what you said. Is that correct? That you can mark Trump at the beginning of Exeter. So I wasn't going into this internal line. The increase, I think it's a generally accepted. It's general accepted that 2022, the Vesper series of Elder Tess was the increase of knowledge in our movement. I think the discussion was what are the external events connected to that in the same time period. So then you make a line for Ukraine, what I did, or you can make a line that is related to and you mark June 24, the overturning of Roe v. Wade. But that's a story in itself. It's a line in itself. I'm not a specialist in that one. I know that in November and December of 2021, the SCOTUS was working on this court case. They had I think the oral hearings. So in June 24, they had the, what do you call it, the decision. So that's the two waymarks that I would mark. And I don't have any for these so far. So people have been asking me about those lines, those stories. And what I only did this weekend is giving us this upper line structure. I'm suggesting that this is the structure that we use to understand other lines as well. So people have been asking, what do you do with Exeter, the formalization of the message? If that is 2024. Because a lot happened in 2024 in the movement. Question?
When you're done with your point, I would have a question about Boston, but only if you say.
Okay, we'll do that then after. Yeah. So, was there another? Oh, yeah.
You've said we need to use the story of the King of the North and the King of the South to guide us in all the other decisions we make. About where we're going to place the waymarks and stuff.
No, I'm not saying that the King of the North, King of the South is more important than the other lines. It's just the first line that I could kind of complete from the beginning to the end. That would make sense to me. You can do it with an abortion line if you like. If you have a line, whatever, on the theme of abortion, and you can make it from the beginning to the end, that can become the structure for the rest. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I guess this is a rhetorical question. Why have you chosen this line? And the second question is, why are you fielding questions about other lines?
Why fill in questions?
Why are you answering questions about other lines? Which is another way of saying, why are people asking you about other lines? So two questions. Why have you chosen, it's related to Curtis's question, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Why have you chosen this line as opposed, you said I could have chosen any line. So why this one? Why not another one? And why are people asking you about other lines?
Okay. So why I've chosen this line, it didn't feel like a choice or something. But it describes a history where it's a history where I think we have an understanding of the end. The death of the King of the South. So you have a waymark that is, you don't know how, but you know we have a death at the end. And I think 2021 to the Sunday law, or for 2021 to the time where we're living in today, and you just follow the news, I think this is the most obvious story to follow because you're just because there's so much information about it. There's a lot of information available. And media is talking about it every day. And we know it is prophetic because it is a proxy war. It's a war between the king of the north and the king of the south. I'm not, I think it's a bad answer to your question, but mhm. Yeah, but he's responding. Yeah. And why do why do people ask about the other lines? Because they want to test my line. If you say 2024 is Exeter, so where's the Exeter message then in 2024? Or because many people have a understanding of the internal line. They have a picture of it based on the studies that have been presented. I challenge them now. So they're now questioning. That's my words. They think, okay, this makes sense, this line that he presented, but it challenges my view on the other line. So I want to hear from him how he thinks about this challenge that I'm dealing with now. So I think that's what people ask me about other lines. Of course.
What's one?
Oh, no.
All I wanted to point out is that the reason this line has been chosen, that you chose this line, is because if we call it America or internal, all the symbology that's being used there to create those lines are all new ideas. We're reinventing terms. So the threefold union is now being redefined in a way that it's never been done before. So how do you know these new definitions are correct?
Mm-hmm.
The rise of a dictator is now being defined as the failure of the Republican Party. And this movement never taught things like that before. So how do you know these new ideas are correct? It seems to me, when I heard what you were presenting, you didn't say it directly, but if you go to the Time of the Year magazine, definitions that are given there for Daniel 11, just say 40 and 41. You haven't changed that. You've used established terms, ideas, and models that I think we should all believe or believe are correct. Separate to the details about the increase of knowledge or the formalization, we know that line and the symbols haven't changed. If we were to create a line of abortion, you have no way of cross-referencing that to another story that we all know is correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think that line was chosen. And the second answer to my question, people shouldn't be asking, will explain the internal Exeter story. So we know that your line is correct. That's not how we're supposed to be playing with lines. The line that you've proposed either stands or falls on its own merits. You're using that line to check another line. The line that you're checking can't be used to check your own line. So everybody who's asking you questions about the line you're supposed to be checking, to prove the veracity of your line, it seems to me they don't understand what you're actually doing.
Yep.
Sure. It was a group discussion, and you and me were part of it. And we were brainstorming about Panium. And in this discussion, we took the build up at the border. And we took the battle up till the point of the invasion. Because at the day of the invasion, it was clear that Putin didn't get what he wanted. He lost the battle. So that was our discussion back then. And what I'm understanding you do now is that you don't consider that as part of Boston. And you only consider the build-up as Boston. Could you elaborate? Could you elaborate a bit?
I know the military buildup is taking place in the same time period. But I think Panium is not the military buildup. It is the information war that Putin loses as soon as Biden stands up. And that's about the military buildup, of course. Because Putin says, no, we're just doing a training there. And Biden says, no, you're going to invade. You're going to do it from the north, from the east, and then you're going to plan it in a few days. And they start to share that story and they push that narrative. And the narrative of the USA starts to win it from the Russian version. And that's what I mark in October. Mark starts in October. I think that's Panium. Not the military. It's all connected with the military buildup. The military buildup itself is not Panium.
Do you separate, you did detach Panium from Boston then? You say the two different things, which we need to consider differently. Fulfillment of Panium with its details. And then Boston, which is the arrival of a message for a new dispensation.
But that's an internal arrival of a message. You want to respond on this? Yeah, that's fine.
I was just going to say what Arjan's been saying, that there's different stories that you tell at a waymark. And at a date that you give that waymark, you'll never see all the stories achieved at that date. So the story about a message arriving, the story of America's war against itself, and then the story of America against Russia, are all different stories that will have different dates.
I want to respond on Tamina. I had a moment to think. Because you mark Boston as a beginning of something that you don't really see as a message, but and I think I talked about that. And I think we talked about it yesterday evening here in this group discussion. Well, when you mark 2021 as an Exeter for the Sunday law, then at the Sunday law, we mark the rise of the USA as this unilateral power. You could say, I think yesterday we called it, what was it? No, not this discussion. So USA has power. You could say MAGA. That's Trump's version. This is Trump. What we said here, this is also MAGA, but this is Biden. Biden restores US credibility, wins the defeat defeats the king of the south in the information war. It's all to make America great. But this was Biden. And I'm saying this is the mini version of what is going to take place at the Sunday Law. Maybe you can't see it so much. It was just a White House meeting, and you can read about it in the media. So that is Boston. It's there, but it develops into MAGA version Trump.
And in our lines, depending what line it is, being Boston or Exeter.
Yeah, you can. This is a Boston. This is an Exeter. Sorry. Yes, this, yeah, it's a Boston. It's an Exeter, but Boston is it develops. I don't know if that answers. Helps.
Answered the invasion question I had about our discussion in Austria, but we can also talk afterwards if you want.
I don't remember. Well, but okay. What was the point about the invasion that we made?
Back then we talked about Panium and when Panium would take place or how long the battle was. And the conclusion of that discussion was the invasion itself was the end of the battle. Because Putin essentially didn't get what he was planning to get.
I don't get that point because he didn't get it, but later on. I mean, it was not on the day of the invasion that he didn't get it, or I don't get that point.
When he invaded,
Yeah,
he thought within hours or short days, he was thinking to have the Ukraine government collapse and take over. And that didn't happen. And he gets stuck in this long war. And him not reaching that goal, we thought could mark the end of Panium. The King of the South loses.
yeah, okay, yeah. I don't remember the discussion, but I know the thought. And that's what I think I discussed in my first presentation. That even the Weimar Panium wasn't really settled. Elder Tess did several presentations on it, but I think never finished it completely. So I think that was the discussion that was going on. Where does Panium end? Does it continue into 2022? People thought it even continues in 2023. I talked to people a few weeks ago that still thought we were in Panium. So that waymark wasn't established. Where do you mark the deadly wound of the King of the South? But the thing that Elder Tess had established was the beginning of Panium or Beneventum. When you look at Beneventum, it is a story about elephants. And it started with this warfare by Biden. And yesterday evening in the discussion, it was said Biden poked in the eye of Putin. Because two pro-Russian television stations were shut down. The oligarch was arrested, etc. And I think it was an information war at the beginning, because they started to change the story or the narrative in Ukraine. So that was the beginning of the battle. They wanted to get rid of pro-Russian politicians or news outlets, or at least the ones that were corrupt. So they started to change this. Yes, I keep saying narrative. From pro-Russian to more pro-Europe. Okay. And so the point is, I'm making it, it starts with, Beneventum starts this way, so it should also end. It cannot end with a literal war. It begins with an information war. It ends with an information war element. So that's why I mark October and not the literal invasion. Okay. Yep. Oh, my laptop even turned off. Any other questions? Yeah.
Sorry, but I asked you this question before.
Okay.
Yesterday was not recording and I don't remember the answer. So can you explain again why you took different examples in different lines, as I remember, about what was Exeter?
Yep. So yesterday I did this. I went to several Exeters and tried to find a common characteristic for the external events. So we went to 1996, 2012, 2018, 2021, and again 2021. And I think she had Raquel had a good point. because when I did this, before I go there, I went to those Exeters to look for common characteristic. And Raquel said, you are studying, let's call it the Ukraine line, or the King of the North, King of the South line. But all the Exeters that you looked at were not necessarily belonging to that story. That was your question. So I went to Islam here. I went to America internal here. She said, why not? Why don't you go back to the Exeters of your same of the same story? First of all, no, that's not a good. I don't think it's necessarily necessary, because every Exeter should. I think we should have most characteristics on all Exeters. How do you say that? Sorry, I'm just struggling with my English. I'm taking a concept of Exeter, and I look at other waymarks to see if I find other characteristics. Okay.
Good question. Why you haven't gone to other Exeters on this story or this line?
Yeah.
Which ones would they be?
Well, I want to go to for
Okay.
in 2001. I don't know a story or a line in 2001, an event. I don't know an event in 2001 regarding the battle or the struggle between the King of the North and the King of the South. In 2014, I think same thing. That starts to become more visible in the 2014, I guess. No, 2016, it starts at Ipsos.
You're going to have to do every single waymark and identify every single one for that one line from 1989 to the Sunday Law. And you're saying that's valid to do that?
That's not what I wanted to do when I did this.
You didn't do that. I'm asking, is it valid to even do that? Because you've said it is.
I thought about it. Well, why I said it was making sense to me is because it can look random. I can just pick and choose the Exeters that I want or the characteristics that I want that suit my case. So if you want to be more less picking and choosing and just take the line that you have, that's why I thought it would perhaps make my point stronger. I'm not saying that it's necessary.
My question is it correct to say that all the previous Exeters, all the previous Bostons and Concords are all on this line, and we can identify every single one to bring us up to Sunday law on the line of the King of the North and the King of the South? I haven't got a position. I'm asking because you said you've already just said yes because it's a good question.
I said yes because I think my point, the goal that I had with this, I think my point would be stronger if I would, if possible, use King of the North, King of the South Exeters.
So you're saying yes, they exist.
No, if they exist, I should use them.
Do you believe they exist?
No, I don't think they exist.
So it's not a good question. I know I'm rushing.
Okay.
A good question means a valid question. So you're bought into the idea that you will have every single Exeter on that one story. As opposed to saying, I don't believe you can do that. Just clarifying what your position is. If you believe you can do it or you can't do it.
No, I don't think you can do it for all. But I don't think I have been careful or secure enough. And I could perhaps have done several different. And that's something I think I can look back into. But I'm sure 1996 or 2012 or something are no Exeters in regard to the King of the North. I'm so sorry.
I wanted to ask, I understood before that when you draw a line and you take a dispensation and you take a history.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I have to review.
I understood before.
I understood before that when you draw a line or a dispensation where I want to clarify a point or a history, I have to see this history developing from the beginning. That means from 1989 till the Sunday law, and then we would see also we were supposed to end that history.
I think that's the same discussion. I think that's the same question or the same discussion that we had yesterday evening after the study in regard to 1840. You're looking for a concept, and you look in other places where you can find the same thing. So I'm just looking for the concept of Exeter externally. And of course, in Exeter, you only understand when you understand the whole story. I just didn't do that because of time. And I don't think it's, for this point, it was very relevant to do that. saw a finger here. Last one. Finger. Yeah.
I was just gonna say this, doing it this way seems stronger to me than what Raquel suggests. Because I would suggest that is line upon line, compare and contrasting. I might be wrong, but I understood what Raquel says. She tried to have a thread. She was threading.
Okay, so 10 minutes ago was told that we should stop in 10 minutes. So I think we leave the discussion for after. It will be a long afternoon. But I thank you for your questions. And I didn't answer all the questions also that I received. But perhaps they can be answered in the future. Let's pray. Dear Lord, you see, you've been seeing us having good discussions. Lord, I feel blessed being part of this movement, that we are allowed to have opinions and have discussions. That you're a God that want to help us develop our understandings ourselves. And that you lead us in it. We pray that you continue to lead us in getting a better understanding of the times we're living in. That we all may come in unity on the important messages. I pray for the movement worldwide. The leaders, the ministry leaders, the continental leaders. Continental leaders. I pray that you bless them all in guiding and directing the flock. In a way that you would do in a way that you do with us. I pray that you continue to guide and direct us. In Jesus' name, amen.